Good morning here in Singapore and good evening in Latin America. Welcome to our second part of the webinar on the virtual mission for fresh fruits, frozen and concentrate of fruits. Today, for the program, we have some opening remarks. We will welcome our guest speaker, Otavio Augusto Lopez from Accenture. He will be sharing on the go-to-market strategies for ASEAN for the fresh, frozen, dried, and fruit concentrates. And later, we will be moving on sharing on Indonesia's fresh, frozen, dried fruits and fruits concentrates imports regulation. So Indonesia is by far one of the largest market in the Southeast Asia region. And for this, we have invited Fernando Ballard, who is the ASEAN attaché, commercial attaché at the Embassy of Chile in Indonesia. With that, I will just start with some opening remarks. And I will first like to thank you for being again with us in this evening of yours. I am Angela Torres. I am the director of the Latin American Chamber of Commerce. And the aim of the Latin Cham with these virtual missions, it's first of all to inform the producers in Latin America about this market. Second is to connect you with some of your potential buyers. And most of all, beyond going on a connection is actually to build relations. So please do count on us to build the relation, to help you and be an extra hand, especially in these moments that we cannot travel. In yesterday's presentation, we saw the upcoming demand in Southeast Asia on the fresh fruits and also on the fruits concentrates and juices. We see that the pandemic has accelerated the consumption of healthy products, and Southeast Asia accounts for the 600 people population here, which we saw that Philippines is actually leading that higher demand on eating more healthy and they aim to eat more fruits. As well, we saw with all the information shared by our friend Tim Hale from Global Data, what all those tastes that will be leading in the future. So berries are very high. And then we are pleased to have countries like Argentina, Mexico, Chile, and Peru that are strong in producing berries. And berries as well as the concept of the antioxidants into it. Likewise, we saw how actually Singapore can be a port to support re-exports of fruits, probably not in the fresh fruits, but in the frozen fruits to markets as far as of China to easy this transshipment and these operations. So do count on us if you require to have more information or further connections to any of the shipping lines, connections to PSA cargo or other solutions. And with that, I will now like to welcome Otavio from Accenture to give his presentation. Otavio?
Yeah, good morning, Angela. Good morning, everyone. I don't know, but I'm blocked here by the organization to enable camera or something different. So when I try to open my camera, start my video, it says that oh now yeah. So and Angela, that my colleague Siraj is on the call as well, and he's gonna run the presentation for the e-commerce. So I will ask you to allow him as well to come in the camera because he's gonna be sharing the materials. But before we move into the presentation, good morning bom dia to my colleagues in Latin America. I'm Otavio. I'm from Brazil, living here in Singapore for some years, and I'm responsible for food and agribusiness in Accenture. Accenture is a consulting organization. We work with many fruit companies around the world, many food companies around the world, and we've been helping these companies to succeed not only in here in Southeast Asia, but in the broader APAC and around the globe. Okay, my colleague Siraj, who leads interactive and digital commerce for our consumer products group, we run the presentation. But I want to share just some of my thoughts here before we jump into the digital commerce about the context. I know you got a lot of information yesterday from Global Data, and Ting shared with me the materials as well. I just want to highlight some points. Okay, so despite the trend that we've been facing for the last 5 years on canned veggies and processed fruits and veggies in general, where we're seeing, for example, for canned veggies and canned fruits, a shrink of these categories global-wise year after year. What happened is that with the COVID global-wise, and I'm bringing the data points from Southeast Asia. The point is that all these categories, they faced a completely turnaround. So, for example, canned fruits that was shrinking on double digit. With COVID, the turnaround was a double-digit growth as well. So most of the companies that were, let me say, all well positioned here in this part of the world with stocks, distribution channels, they surfed the opportunity. So they capture a good sales moment with the COVID, and the tail of the COVID is still there. Maybe the pace is not still on the same double digit, but it's still there. And these companies, most of them, it's quite interesting because they were pivoting for new portfolios of products. So they were moving from canned veggies, canned fruits to be more aligned to health conscious portfolio, plant-based portfolio, or even frozen, moving from canned to frozen because of consumer perception about brine and sugar syrup. They stop a little bit this pivot because they put a focus on capture the opportunity of this COVID phenomenon that happened here in the market. So this is the first important point. Our Accenture POV is that the concept on home cooking will remain, will be something that will stay longer. So what we call culinary meal helpers or quick enablers will still be in the place. So it's something that we don't see phasing out soon. The second point that is important is that, and I think Angela is make this point on a very sharp way every time we come into the discussion, is that Asia Pacific is not just a one region. Okay, you need to look for Asia Pacific with a set of different countries. My colleague Siraj will cover this as well. But beyond the market taxonomies, what we need to understand is that there are different price structures. There are different archetypes of consumers. And this is very important, especially for this industry. First, for an example, if you look for the trend of moving to cans for plastic bags, frozen veggies, for an example, where there is a difference on price on average, I would say 2 to 3 times more expensive on green peas in plastic bags than green peas in brines in cans. Some markets, they are keen to pay for this difference. So, for example, in Singapore, you can see people paying for this. But when you go, for example, for Philippines, for Indonesia, people are not keen to pay for this difference as well. So we have markets that are on different stages, and they are on different, let me say, price sensitive moments as well. The other thing that we are still facing a transition, and I would say that the market here is less prepared or less keen to pay for sustainability as well. So when we see in the EU that the consumer is, let me say, concerned about the origin, but concerned about the origin from a sustainability perspective, what happens here is that the concern about origin is much more from a biosecurity perspective. So they want to understand if this is something that comes from a place that is free of diseases or responsible use of chemicals, and this reflects on price, of course. If you go, for example, for a gala apple price is coming from US compared to the ones coming from China, you're going to see a huge difference on the price of this. And of course, there is a component of quality as well. Okay, so this is something very important. In some markets, as I said, some consumers they are keen to pay for more, especially Singapore, where we have a big community of expats living here. So they are keen to pay more. In Thailand, they are keen to pay more as well. Indonesia and Philippines, more sensitive to price. The other interesting thing is that there is a trend global-wise about food waste, and most of the countries, they are fighting against food waste on a big time. In Asia Pac, you have the examples of the biggest food waste in the globe, and what happens is that people they are not embarking on. I pay for a banana, even a black spotted one. I don't care. I know they are sweeter. I know they have, let me say, a shelf life shorter than the green ones. But at the same time, I'm conscious that I don't want to waste more food. Here, this is not a trend. So if you go for fresh fruits in general, people pay by what they see. This concept is very important. Here, it's mandatory. So most of the time, even on the wet markets here, you see that when it comes for, let's say, I would take the example of banana. Black dotted ones are products that goes for sun-dried channels. So they need to sell for half of the price or third of the price. Otherwise, it will get spoiled and it's going to go to waste. So it's very important as well. And this reflects, of course, into something that we all know that is critical for the industry, that is the supply chain needs to be super accurate from time to harvest to time on the shelf. So this is another element that I would like to share. The other point that is very material, especially for companies working on the position of ingredients, more and more there will be pressures not coming necessarily from the consumer, but coming from government agencies to be health conscious. So sugar reduction, sodium reduction will be themes that will be, let me say, more and more into the agenda. So every formulation today, if we go for the beverage industry and we look, for example, into juice, the tax for a juice with, let me say, 16 grams of sugar is completely different for one that has less than 1 gram of sugar. And this reflects on price as well. So this is super important, in my opinion, because companies that align on providing ingredients with this agenda, they will be quite well positioned to the markets here. And the other point is that there is another trend as well that is, I think, less important for this group here, but somehow important, is functional nutrition. So we've seen that companies are looking to bring into their ingredients functional add-ons that can be enablers of healthy choice that necessarily brings down lower taxation and better price to the market as well. So I want to pause here. I just want to add these points because I got the presentation from Global Data yesterday, and I think it was a good idea to bring this to you. And right now I'm gonna give the stage for my friend Siraj, who's gonna talk about how e-commerce can help enable companies that are willing to do business here in this part of the world. Thanks, Siraj.
Thank you, Otavio. Thank you, Angela, for inviting us for this session. It's an extremely important and an interesting session for us because food, specifically packaged food and frozen food, is a large growth area across Asia Pacific, and we have some insights to share. So let me share my screen first. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, Raj.
Very good, very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so Otavio, I think Otavio gave an initial introduction to how we at Accenture see this entire frozen fruits and frozen food category. And I think from a commerce perspective, this is going to drive growth in Asia Pacific because Asia Pacific is the world's growth engine. Anybody who's in business knows that the growth coming in from Asia Pacific is going to be the highest in the world. You take markets like China, where the population is almost close to 1.3 billion. And India very recently overtook China as well. India has a population of almost close to 1.34 billion. So India has actually overtaken China. Indonesia is close to 250 million people. So you add up all the countries in Southeast Asia, you have a population of almost close to 700 million. So almost close to 47% of the world's population resides in Asia Pacific, and this actually gives an impetus for digital commerce, which is actually helping drive growth. And I'm sure in the audience today, we have many people who have seen the growth of digital commerce, as some people call it e-commerce. Okay, we don't call it e-commerce because e-commerce is just a sliver of what digital commerce is. Digital commerce is using all the digital tools to drive commerce growth. And this is where we believe that digital commerce in Asia can actually help you drive growth. So we work with companies to help them focus on building digital commerce platforms, whether it is B2B or B2B2C, or it is D2C or social commerce. That's where the growth is going to come, and that's where we at Accenture focus. And we believe that specifically, if you're looking at the food and beverages category, digital commerce is going to be one of the most important growth drivers going forward. Now, hang on, let me just push this slightly aside. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to start the presentation with what are the 10 digital commerce trends for the next 10 years? Accenture invests in a lot of research. We do research every 6 months globally. We do a lot of research in Asia Pacific as well. We also work with third-party partners, like what Otavio mentioned, we have a relationship with Global Data as well. We work with Euromonitor, we work with AC Nielsen, we work with Kantar. And leveraging all the data we have, we've come up with what we are calling as 10 digital commerce trends for the next 10 years. Okay, this is extremely important because a lot of companies, specifically companies who are in B2B, are asking us, they're asking us, okay, what is the future? What is the future of commerce? Okay, and what is going to happen in Asia Pacific? So the first point is that home sweet home. COVID has shown us that the home has become the center of our universe. Research has proven that almost close to 50% of people will not go back to office regularly. They might go back to office, 1 or 2 days in a week, but a lot of people are actually going to work from home. So what does this mean? This means that the home has become the center of universe. Ottavio briefly touched on this. So everything is going to happen in home, and with a mobile phone in their hands, consumers are going to shop. They're going to buy food, they're going to buy drinks, they're going to buy entertainment, they're going to buy travel, they're going to buy fashion, they're going to buy education, games for their kids. So everything will be from home. And that's where companies need to pivot, because earlier the pivot was outside home, because a lot of people were outside home in offices, they were going to restaurants, they were going to cafeterias. But now the pivot is going to be at home. And this is going to continue at least for the next 36 months. That is what our research indicates. So home sweet home is going to become the center of the universe. And the second thing is that online grocery shopping is getting a boost. Earlier, consumers used to go to offline stores. They used to walk into a store, convenience store, department store, to actually buy their grocery, buy their food, buy their juices, buy their drinks. But what is happening is we are seeing that online grocery shopping is actually getting a boost. So if I have to give you a indication, in China, almost close to 25% of people buy all their grocery online. They actually go to Alibaba, they go to JD.com, and they actually buy their grocery. So all their food products, all their fruits, juices, everything are actually bought online. In Southeast Asia, this is picking up. In Singapore, 6 months ago, we realized that almost 17% of people were all buying 100% of their grocery. They were actually buying online, and this number will actually grow up. So what are we seeing? We are seeing that consumers are buying anywhere between 4 to 8 grocery products online in Southeast Asia. So online grocery shopping is actually going to grow more and more as time passes and as companies start improving their supply chain. And the third trend here is that digital commerce is going to become the way of life. So whether you are in a B2B business or whether you are in a direct-to-consumer business, digital commerce is the way of life. A lot of companies who we are working with are now coming to us and saying, okay, our B2B supply chain is disrupted. So how can we build a digital commerce platform? And likewise, all the direct-to-consumer companies are also talking about that. So digital commerce is going to become the way of life. Anything and everything you want, you'll be able to buy from your mobile phone. So that is the third trend. Then the fourth trend is all about me, myself, and artificial intelligence. This is where data personalization is going to become very important. And a lot of companies have started collecting data because they believe that data is going to be the gold of the future. This is the oil which is going to drive commerce and communication. So companies specifically need to start looking at data, because consumers have started looking inwardly. They've started looking at themselves, and companies need to know what consumers want, and that's where artificial intelligence, data analytics becomes extremely important. And the fifth one here is social commerce. Social commerce is going to be the new commerce. By 2030, all commerce, whether it is B2B, B2C, social commerce, P2P, C2C, everything is going to become social commerce. There will be a social commerce component. I'm sure you have seen how live streaming in China is actually changing the way consumers are actually going to shop. Social media in Indonesia and in Thailand, people use Facebook, they use Instagram to actually sell. So social commerce is actually going to become the new commerce. And 10.6 is that marketplaces. A lot of business has gone to marketplaces. If you look at China, Alibaba, not only Tmall, but LST, I'm not sure if many of you have heard of LST. LST is Li Shui Tong. Li Shui Tong is a B2B platform. So on LST, you're able to reach almost close to 4 million mom and pop stores. So if you are in a B2B business and you need to target mom and pop stores, how are you going to do that in China? You need to be on LST. JD.com also has their own platform. And if you look at India, in India, Amazon has built a B2B platform. Flipkart is building one. Jio Reliance is actually building a B2B platform. So marketplaces are going to become the future, even from B2B as well as the B2C perspective, because your mom and pop stores, your penetration is not very high from your traditional distribution channel. So companies are looking at B2B platforms. If you go to a country like Indonesia, Indonesia has something called Gudang Ada. Gudang Ada is a B2B platform, and they actually help you reach 1 million mom and pop stores. If you go to Philippines, Philippines has Tokosari. So there are a lot of marketplaces which are coming up, and these are becoming consumer as well as customer magnets. And the seventh trend here is direct to consumer. So you might be in the business of B2B, you might be in the business of B2C, but direct to consumer is where your consumers are coming to look for your brand experience, and this is where you actually collect your data. So trend 7 is very important because this helps you collect the right kind of data so that you're able to do better communication. And trend 8, if you are in a B2B industry, this is very, very important. You can say goodbye to the traditional B2B channels, because these channels, what we currently see now, from the company, it goes to the distributor, from the distributor to the sub-distributor, from the sub-distributor to the retailer, and retailer to the mom and pop stores. That ecosystem is going to change very, very soon, because everything is going to get automated. So mom and pop stores can directly come to your platform, and they can actually buy your products, or they can go to LST, or they can go to Amazon. So B2B companies need to focus as to if the traditional B2B channel is still dominant, okay, and how long. Is it for the next 24 months? Is it for the next 36 months? So this is going to change. And 9th, I think Ottavio touched on this very, very briefly. Sustainability is the new green. A lot of people born after 1980, 2000, they are actually looking at the world. They are saying our Earth, the place where we live, is getting polluted. I'm sure just yesterday you heard in the news that Earth is going to become 1.5 degrees more hotter. So this is having an impact, and the youngsters, the millennials, the Generation Z, they're all looking at it saying, okay, how can I make everything I buy sustainable, right from packaging to the food I consume? So sustainability is actually going to become the new green. And the last one is that supply chain is going to become a deal breaker. We saw during COVID how the traditional supply chains actually got disrupted, and with commerce coming in, supply chain is actually going to become a deal breaker. So these are the top 10 trends for the next 10 years. So whether you are in B2B, whether you are in D2C, whether you are in B2B2C, these 10 trends are going to define how you're going to sell products to your consumers and how you're actually going to buy products.
Siraj, just one point on your presentation. I think two key themes that I want to highlight for my colleagues in Latam, that I know that there is a big difference for us. One is the topic that you made it super bold, mom and pop. If you want to play in this part of the road, you need to pay attention for mom and pop. And I think maybe you'll have some statistics about what is the percentage of food that goes via mom and pop instead of the traditional retail. The second one that people is always a little bit skeptical is about social commerce is the new commerce when it comes for fruits, for example. And I can tell you that I've been facing that companies who are investing on this, they are making more money into the same of their competitors. So we have examples here in this part of the road for kiwis, for even for bananas and for apples as well. So three fruits where we've seen companies investing in brand, and they are making much more money by the same product. Of course, the quality of these kiwis are like well recognized as the best ones. The same apply to the apples and the banana is quite interesting because the banana is aligned to something that is like for me. I'm not a millennial, but I always eat banana, and banana is banana. The only difference is that these guys they put a brand, they put a package that touch the heart of the children for these, and they are making much more profit from the same. So just to emphasize these 3 points, Siraj, that I think it's quite aligned to what you're saying.
Thank you, Ottavio, for that. I think you touched a very, very important point. You know, a lot of people miss social commerce. Social commerce is very, very important. Okay, take for example, okay, this is the season for melons in Japan. You know, the melons which cost $80, $120, okay, $200, and those melons are actually sold by word of mouth. They're actually sold on social commerce. I'm not sure if many of you are aware that Korea has very famous grapes. You know, they're called the Kuho grapes. And again, this is the season for Kuho grapes. And I have signed up on their website, and I keep getting messages as to why Kuho grapes are the best grapes in the world. You know, they are 10 times more expensive than the regular grapes you actually get from South Africa or from Egypt. But I have seen a lot of people actually buy it. So please don't discount social commerce, because social commerce is going to be extremely important in how people buy your products in the future. Okay, so I'll move on. So you saw the 10 trends. And this is where Asia is primed for growth. You know, we've taken some numbers, you know, leveraging our Accenture research team. You know, we have a very big research team in India of about 200 people. We did a very, very brief analysis. So from 2020 to 2025, this is only online. There will be a 3 times growth. And this is the consumer demand, but this consumer demand actually translates into B2B growth. So if you look at China currently is about $1.4 billion online. This is poised to grow to $5.6 billion. Okay, so this is almost a 4 times growth, which is actually happening in China. And you can see across all the markets which we have selected. You know, we've selected about six key regions here, because in Asia Pacific there are 20 countries with a population of more than 1 million. You know, and I've taken the countries with the highest population, as well as with the highest GDP and the highest spending power on food and fresh products. So if you look at the 6 markets we've got, so China, definitely growth. Japan is showing a lot of resilience. Okay, Japan specifically, if you're looking at fresh and frozen foods, there is an upside now. This category was actually going down, but for last after COVID in Japan, this is actually going up. Korea is almost double. India is almost close to 6 times. India will go from 200 million to about 1.2 billion online spend. Australia is almost growing at 4 times. So these numbers clearly indicate that there is a market online, you know, and that's where B2B commerce, that's where B2C commerce is going to become extremely critical. But as Ottavio mentioned, the APAC markets, they're all very, very different markets, and they're all very, very unique. China is different, India is different. So let me give you an example. So if you look at commerce essentially has about five different models. So the first one is 3PL. 3PL is a model where you as a company are directly selling your products online. 1PL is where you're selling your products either to a distributor or to the platform. Online retail is where you're partnering with any one of the large retail partners, Specialty retail is where only food and fresh products are sold. C2C is all consumer driven. So these are the 5 different models. Now, if you take China, almost close to 50% of the business is in 3PL, where companies sell directly. This is where you have Tmall, you have JD.com, you actually have Pinduoduo as well. But in China, you also have the 1PL model where you sell directly to your distributors and the distributors actually sell. And that's a very, and that's also again a large piece of business, almost close to 20% of the business. Online retail, which is coming now, something like Hema is becoming big. Online retail is almost close to 25%. And then you got specialty retail like Sam's. Sam's in China sells only food, fresh and food products. And then you've got all the C2C, which is more your consumer driven, which is WeChat. So this is the ecosystem in China. But when you move to Japan, the ecosystem is very, very different. In Japan, it is all about online retail. In Japan, you need to be on Aeon, you need to be on Muritsu, you need to be on Defe. But you can also do 3PL on Amazon as well as Rakuten. But the specialty retail is also very big here. And then you have the entire 1PL on Lohaku. So you can clearly see the difference between the market. So you cannot have one particular model in Asia Pacific. And if you look at Korea is again very, very different. They have the 3PL channels, which is the marketplaces. But Korea, the specialty retail is very, very big because a lot of people, Korea is the world's fastest internet company, internet country, they have the fastest broadband. A lot of people in Korea actually buy online. So there is a huge specialty retail in Korea. And in India, the entire 1PL category is actually growing, where you sell to the distributors or to some of the big marketplaces like Big Basket, Amazon, and they actually sell for you. And then there is the online retail, which is growing, but the other categories of C2C as well as 3PL are also growing as well. So if you're going to go to India, then the model is going to be very, very different. And in Australia, Australia is more a online retail market, just like Japan. Australia is more an online retail market, and there it is all about Coles as well as Woolworths. But almost 25% of the share is going to come from specialty retail. So this is very, very important. So if you are in frozen food, if you are in fresh food, fresh fruits, fresh products, the APAC markets are very, very different. And depending on the market you're going to operate in, you need to choose the right ecosystem. And then let me move on to the next slide. Apart from those models, there are other models which are actually developing in Asia Pacific, because Asia Pacific is growing. So you must win in these models, which is the pure play 3PL, 1PL, maybe your direct to consumer and then the social. But then the CPG to customer, you need to build your B2B models, direct on click, brick and clicks, and then you also need to do some selective experiments. So in Asia, you cannot have one model, because if you have one model, in 24 months, your business is going to become obsolete. So you need to keep segmenting your different models. And this is where, if you look at Asia Pacific, about 24 months ago, Asia was a very price-driven market. Specifically, if you look at B2B, it was all about price. But I think what is happening is there is a customer centricity coming into Asia Pacific now. A lot of companies who are into fresh, who are into frozen foods, are actually moving away from price to value. What is the value we can give to our B2B customers? It is not just the juice concentrates, okay? It is not just it is not just the products for them to package and actually sell. How can we add value to it? Can we bring value add from a packaging perspective? Can we bring value add from a data perspective? And there is a lot of movement in this, moving away from price to value. And this is where a lot of companies are focusing and saying, okay, how can I increase my customer centricity so that I can build the right B2B digital commerce model? And this is where we are actually seeing a pivot as well as a reversal happening. So if you look at the triangle on the left-hand side, this is your typical current triangle. you have the salespeople, but the salespeople are more focused on looking at surveys, discounts, price, specifications. They're not looking at the business outcomes, solutions, new products. And because the salespeople are actually focused here, companies are getting low price. They're getting, low loyalty. They have poor customer satisfaction. So you need to reverse this pyramid. And then the salespeople must actually focus more on the business outcomes. They need to focus on the solutions, whereas you need to build digital commerce platforms to focus on the entire pricing, service, expertise, everything. And this is where B2B companies, where they're currently focusing on price and discounts, they need to focus more on actually driving value. So you need to move away from a typical pyramid to a reverse pyramid, so that you can actually bring a more customer centric value. And to actually do this, you need to focus on three things. So the first thing is the strategy. What is your digital commerce strategy? How are you going to look at it for the next couple of years? Are we going to use the traditional distribution channels, or are you going to move into new channels? Are you going to bring in value instead of price? Because if you compete on price, there are other competitors who will beat you on price. But if you're on value, nobody can actually beat you. So you need to look at that entire strategy as to how you're going to do that. So that's one. Then the second one is, how are you going to leverage technology? Because technology is going to make it easier for your customers to look for your products online, buy your products online. So how are you going to leverage technology? And the third one is, how are you becoming much more creative in the way you're going to approach your business? I'm going to pause there. That is what I actually wanted to present. Ottavio, over to you, and over to the audience if you have any other questions.
Siraj, there is one question in the chat. It's about, if you can see on the chat, it's about I think it's Malaysia and Vietnam, about the platforms. Can you see this?
Yes, I can see that.
And I think you share on the slide, but maybe you can just give the answer here.
Okay. So in Thailand, there is a B2B platform, but it is an evolving platform. Let me get the name for you. Vietnam. Okay. This particular platform is actually promoted by the largest Vietnam milk company. They're actually partnering with a couple of partners to actually promote this. I'll get the name and I will actually send it to you. Because it's not coming top of my mind. Yes, there's a platform in Vietnam. In Malaysia, there is no platform, because in Malaysia, the retail ecosystem is very, very well developed. So a lot of companies are going directly to mom and pop stores to actually build their B2B ecosystem. So in Malaysia, there is no platform, but in Vietnam, yes. There is another global company. I'm not going to give you the name of that company. It is one of the world's largest consumer product goods company, and they are building a platform. It is a B2B platform, and in Philippines and in Vietnam, they are partnering. So if you are keen, we can actually introduce you to that partner in Vietnam. We're currently working with them. We are actually helping build their platform in Vietnam. I can give you the name of the platform. It's called Grow 24/7, but it is part of a global consumer product goods company.
Yeah, and just to complement Siraj, that I think it's an important concept is that why this happens in Vietnam happens as well in China and in Pakistan, and maybe it's going to happen in Myanmar and some others, because at the same time we have on the right side we have the connection to moms and pops, and to not just only to the traditional retail. In the supply side, this is where we have the big concentration of smallholders, small producers as well. So these guys, they need this kind of mechanism to connect them to the demand. So this is where the platforms are really booming, less on Malaysia, as Siraj mentioned. And the other thing that especially for fruits and veggies, people needs to be connected is to the trend of urban farming. That is something that is coming. So most of the countries today, especially for example, when we look for Singapore with the ambition of the 30-30 strategy for the country, there will be a lot of local production based on urban farming. And this local production, of course, they will have the preference for local consumers, and even the more important, for example, for the local millennials that will put a priority to buy from these, let me say, new trendy sources and local sources as well. So this is another element that is important for the discussion. Okay.
Otavio, I think there's one more question, which is on social commerce. Sonia, I think you're right. Okay, one is the importance from a awareness perspective, but more importantly is that people want to stay and eat healthy. I'm not sure if many of you are aware. I'm sure some of you are aware of this concept. It's called edible beauty. The concept of edible beauty is coming into fresh. People are looking at, okay, what do I eat to stay beauty from inside so that I can look good outside? Specifically, if you look at markets like Australia, Korea, and to a certain extent, even in China, this is happening, and parts of Southeast Asia, this is happening. So a lot of millennials, and specifically people born after 2000, are looking at edible beauty as a concept where they don't need to put chemical products on their face. They actually don't need to take chemical products, in their body. They're actually looking at organic products. They're actually looking at natural products which will help them build their beauty from inside so that they can look good from outside. And that's where a lot of focus is actually going to be built over the next 24 to 36 months, because even the beauty industry is realizing the concept of fresh food, the concept of fruits in your diet actually makes an importance to how you look. And this is where I think there's a huge opportunity for food companies and fruit companies to actually take that route of edible beauty, and then social commerce is going to be the way for it, going to be the channel for you to actually communicate this.
I think there is another question here about buying fruits from supermarket or local business. Would the supermarket or local business buy large volumes online? Do you think that they would buy online? Sorry, Ignacio, who do you think that they would buy online here? Who are you referring to here on your question?
Sorry, Otto, is that question for me?
No, it's for Ignacio. His question is, would the supermarket buy large volumes online for fruits? I think that let me take this one, Siraj. Yeah. I think the answer is yes. There are two different models, Ignacio, happening here. So one is the traditional one. So the traditional retail aggregating and having volumes and trying to transfer the benefit of the aggregation to price and being more competitive. There is one, let me say, skeptical part about buying fruits. For example, the consumer buying from supermarket is, I want to choose my own fruits. So most of the time, the fruits that you need to make your choice, you avoid to buy. I'll give you my personal example. I buy bulk fruits like watermelon. I buy fruits that I know where the quality is not compromised. For example, cherries, apples. I buy all of these online, but I buy my papayas. I go to the wet market to buy, because most of the time when I buy online, they don't come as I want. The second element is a trend that I've seen in Europe, and I see here more and more. Is an example is the pure taste one. Pure Fresh, Pure Taste, is where this is a marketplace connecting growers to consumers. If you go for their marketplace, you're gonna see that the brands from all the suppliers are there. So they bring dairy, they bring fruits, they bring veggies, many different things. And these farmers, they put all their products via this channel. And this is all, let me say, more brand-based than, let me say, just a product. As Siraj said, it's more on the value that you perceive from what you are buying than the simple fruit itself. So you go there, you pay sometimes a little bit more, but you are buying organic, you are buying from a grower or from a farmer where the story of the farmer is there as well. And this is becoming super trendy as well.
Yeah, and just to add to what Ottavio said, Ignacio, would a supermarket or local business buy large volumes? Yes. Okay. If you look at the way the trend is going, it might not be now, but if you look at what is happening in China and Korea, because when you look at Asia Pacific, you don't look at other markets. You look at what is happening in China, Japan, and Korea. You will get an indication as to how Asia is going to behave over the next 3 to 5 years, because most of the Asian trends come from China, Japan, and Korea. So in Korea, there is a trend for local businesses to actually buy volumes online, and even for mom and pop stores. And even in China, if you actually go to some of the big cities like Shanghai, Shenzhen, Beijing, you can actually see some of the large, specialty retailers. They're actually buying online. So this will continue. Maybe not as fast as we want in Southeast Asia, but this is a trend which I think in 24 months this is going to happen, because if you look at the rate of automation which is happening from a B2B perspective, and to facilitate the payments, most of the governments, whether it is Thailand, Indonesia, China, Japan, Korea, they are investing in building the entire internet ecosystem. They want to build the internet economy. They are also building the payment system so that even the small retailers, the small and medium businesses can actually go and transact online. So yes, this is going to happen. It is happening in some parts of Asia now, but not as fast as we actually want it to happen.
Thank you very much. I have here some questions. So actually on the edible beauty concept that you were mentioning, one of the companies that is here is actually representing the prawn cluster, or the plum, in Argentina. Actually, without being quoted here, but Argentina has not been a very active country in terms of free trade agreements, or in terms of signing phytosanitary certificates with many other countries in Asia. It's a work in progress. So many of the producers in Argentina are actually looking at the use of the fruits in other ways. So that will be the case of plums, to be used in these edible ingredients, right? Like, there have been studies and they are teaming up with universities that there's an amount of polyphenols and ingredients in the skins of all these berries and plums, etc. What do you think will be for them like the next step to actually come to Asia, but not as selling the product for an edible fruit, but as actually as a cosmetic ingredient?
So I think in my perspective, if you look at it, edible beauty as a concept, I'll take an example from Australia. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys are aware. In Australia, there's a company called Yuchi Gummies. Yuchi Gummies is actually made from fruit extracts. When they started the business about 5 years ago, they were seen as an outlier. Many people said that the concept of edible beauty is still not advanced, and they will not succeed. But what did they do? They realized that their biggest growth is going to come from China. So they went to China and they started working with one university. I think it's the University of Hangzhou. They worked with the University of Hangzhou to start using the product to test and to pilot. And over a period of time, they started building a lot of papers. So they started presenting a lot of papers in China to actually talk about the concept of edible beauty and how fruit extracts, specifically coming in a gummy fruit kind of a concept. So now they've been able to establish their brand. So what did they do? One, they focused on one market in Asia where they think they could make the most difference. That was China. And the second thing is they decided that the best route for them was to work with a university in China to get the right accreditation, get the right approvals before actually launching the product. So that is the second thing they did. And then the third thing they did was that they realized that the power of social media is going to be very important, specifically if you're looking at edible beauty. So they actually signed up with a local key opinion leader. She's a very well-known figure to actually build this product. So now they have a very, very tangible business in China. I think when they started, they started from a base of zero, but now I think they've got almost close to a $50 to $60 million business, which is a very, very good start for an edible beauty client. So if I have to advise, I think I would look at it that way. One market, partner with somebody, look at social media.
No. Perfect, Siraj. You made exactly the comment that I would made it. That is, Angela, in my opinion, it's about partnership. So what we've been facing more and more here, and this is applicable for I think many areas in food and pharma as well, is that the companies are looking to co-develop products. Especially here in Singapore, for example, we see many companies open for co-development. So for the hermanos in Argentina, if they have an ingredient that is something that can be powerful, especially on this functional nutrition, dermocosmetic, or any area, I think they should look for the ecosystem and position themselves as an ingredients organization, because we've been having these discussions with many consumer companies, and they all understand that the cost of R&D is super high. So it's much better to identify the partners with the right ingredients or the right formulations to bring these. And of course, for a company in the other side of the road, the access to the market is something not easy. So if you can take a ride on someone who has the access to the market and be the partner for the formulation, is even better. So this is, for me, the right strategy to enter on a market like this. And the market is booming right now. Functional nutrition, dermocosmetic is top of the list. I don't know if we have results from the last eight promotion in Lazada, but I think as soon as we can analyze that, we're going to see that this kind of vitamins and dermocosmetics will be like something that is really a big sales product here.
Great, thank you very much. And Otavio, I hear from you in last webinar, and I think I would like you to give an advice to companies in Latin America. I see the way that they are growing apples in Argentina, pears, so in Chile, in many other countries, the banana in Ecuador, etc., Costa Rica, that actually is highly sustainable way they do it. I think these companies does it in a very environmental friendly way. And not only for the fresh producers, but also many other companies that are actually doing food manufacturing. And I can just see that we are Latin American companies absolutely terrible at promoting the good that we have. And I see how countries like Australia promote their brands, or New Zealand, as being like the most sustainable, environmental friendly. And this is just driving the price of apples of New Zealand and Australia much higher, when probably Argentinians' apples are growing in a much sustainable way than others. what will be your advice? What to put in that package? What to write in that package? How to make them the traceability? How to inform the end consumer of the good that we are doing?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Angela. I think we discussed this last time we had a workshop, and I think I'm super proud as a Latin America person on the way we run our crops. So, and I can tell you, I've seen the way bananas are being produced in other parts of the world. I don't need to nominate here. And I've seen how we crop these into Central America predominantly, and there is a huge difference. Just when we just look for the amount of plastics involved on the plantations, we've seen a tremendous difference. I think what the companies they need to do is that they need to start moving from just box the bananas without what is really behind all the production process. On top of these, they need to do something that I think I started with some producers in Europe. For example, if you wanna have just a QR code and show where your fruits are coming from, and start giving, let me say, a good view for a comparison about the way they are cropping to the other ways the others are cropping. I think more and more this will be, let me say, valued by the consumers, and of course, people will start paying more. The other thing that is very important is that companies that are succeeding on this space, not necessarily they are verticalized, and we have a very good example. For me, the biggest benchmark on branded fruit, they are not fully verticalized, but they created like an academy for their farmers, for their growers to follow their protocols. And they make sure that every farmer is following this protocol, and they amplify this to the market. So I think this is something that I always discuss when I go to Brazil with my friends, is that we need to move our, as Siraj said, it's about value. It's no longer more about price. We always think about food and agribusiness products as commodities, and we need to pivot our mind and start putting brand, start putting consumer values. What are the value-added type of of mechanisms that I can add on top of the prices? So it's packaging, it's freight, it's risk management, it's FX management, whatever I can make it for my customer will bring the value, and they will promote this value right down to in the value chain. So this is for me what is the right thing to be done, Angela.
And Angela,
thank you very much.
Sorry, just to add to what Otavio said, I'm very passionate about Latin America. I spent 1 year backpacking. I was in Chile, Peru, Argentina, Brazil. Just backpacking, and I've seen the way Latin Americans love the crop. I've seen the way they actually grow it. Okay, that same passion they have in actually growing that, they need to put that same passion in actually branding their products. Many people in China, Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, they actually don't even know how many countries are there in Latin America. I think so there's a need to educate that Latin America is one of the regions in the world which is the most fertile. They're using organic farms. They're using new methods of farming as well as agriculture. I think if you start that education process, I think a lot of consumers will look favorably towards products from Latin America.
Thank you very much, Suraj. Thank you very much for giving us all this knowledge sharing with us. Thank you to Accenture, and thank you to Otavio. We are very, very pleased to have you sharing with us. And we will move to our next part of this webinar, and I would like to invite Fernando Ballard, who is the ASEAN Attaché at the Embassy of Chile in Indonesia. Fernando, the screen and the mic is yours.
Thank you, Ankita. I'm trying to, it says I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it. So as soon as you allow me a video, I'll get started.
Fernando, can you try, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm back now. Yeah, can you see me and hear me well?
Yes.
All right, just 1 second. My presentation should be coming up now.
Yes, you can put it in presentation mode.
Sure. Okay, well, thank you, Angela. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this virtual mission. I'm very happy to be sharing some nuggets of information regarding Indonesia and its obstacles and challenges, may I put it that way, in order to be able to reach this market. I'll also cover regulation at the end of my presentation, but I do want to talk about what opportunities lie in this market as the biggest market in Southeast Asia for Latin American fruit exporters. So with that, I'll dive right into it. Before I do that, I do want to just quickly introduce myself and also say I was listening to the previous panelist's presentation. I thought that was very enlightening, so kudos to them. Very interesting information. My experience is mostly aimed at the objective of this conference. I have developed most of my career in the fruit exporters industry back in Chile. I've been appointed here in Indonesia as the agricultural counselor for the Ministry of Agriculture. I spent most of my career in Chile in the Chilean Fruit Exporters Association. So I know I know quite a deal about the the opportunities, about the quality of produce that is grown in Latin America and how it has become such a relevant global supplier of fresh produce, of quality produce, and with a vast array of different products. So just in case that comes up in any questions, I'd be happy to address those as well. So moving on, I probably will cover some information that has been replicated by previous panelists, but in case I do, I'll swift by them quickly and just focus on the most granular information, which is access. But just to highlight, obviously, we all know Indonesia is the largest economy in Southeast Asia. The population in this country is close to 270 million people, and that's just an absurd number. It's just ridiculously large. It's an archipelago, so you have the problem with distribution sometimes because there's so many islands in this country and it's so scattered that is a struggle. Predominantly, it's a Muslim population. However, it's not an Islamic state, but so there are other religions coexisting in Indonesia. However, Muslim is the most vast one. We do have borders with many countries: Malaysia, Papua, Timor-Leste, and then maritime borders with Australia, India, Philippines, and the rest of the region. As you can see here, Indonesia is split between the largest islands. And again, putting into context, the vast population that exists in this country is quite relevant. So we have Java right here, which is the largest island in the world in terms of population, with coming up close to 145 million people. Jakarta alone, or Greater Jakarta, if that adds some remote cities around the capital, encompasses close to 30 million people. So that's just putting that into context is crazy. And then we have other big islands: Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Bali. Of course, it's kind of an isolated island, but in itself, it's quite a large microeconomy. Ports of entry into Indonesia, and I think relating again to exports of fresh fruit and dried fruit and processed fruit, you want to try to always enter the country through the port of Jakarta. It's called Tanjung Priok, and there are some obstacles in order to be able to address Indonesia through the port of Jakarta. So I'll cover that towards the second part of my presentation. There are other main ports as well that oversee different islands. So we have the port of Tanjung Perak in Surabaya, also within Java, and then in Medan, that's in the north of the western of Sumatra. There's another large port there that oversees most of its trade with Singapore. At least it's very close to Singapore, as well as Malaysia. And as you can see, there's obviously a lot of different ports throughout the country, but I did want to highlight those as the main ports of entry. So I mentioned that Indonesia is predominantly a Muslim country, and that relates to what Indonesia is trying to do to become it has already become the world's largest halal market. That in itself is something that we have to understand consistently, because as Indonesia is working and publishing different sets of regulations to be able to offer its consumers halal qualified or halal approved products, not only plant origin products, but also, of course, livestock products. This is becoming a trend that we need to keep a close eye on. This doesn't relate to only the food industry. It also spans into pharmaceuticals, fashion industry, and tourism. At this point, and I'll be quite brief to summarize this, there are several products that are required to be halal in its processing. And as we move on in the next few years, Indonesia is trying to put all of this together, and for any product that enters the country to be certified as halal from its approved accredited international bodies. So I'm happy to cover more questions on this. At this point, we haven't seen this really impact the fresh produce. Now, I'm talking about fresh produce, of course, apples, fruits, grapes. At this point, those are not required to have halal certification. If we talk about frozen fruit, at this point, I don't see that industry being impacted either. Now, when we relate to processed foods, okay, if we talk about any type of end product that has been processed agro-industrially, there are cases where those need to be accredited for halal in regards to its processing. So if there are residuals of different products or ingredients or macro ingredients that are utilized during its processing, then those need to be abide by. Sometimes you see some components that are included into its processing that may have a residue of pork, and that has been the case in pharmaceutical industries, for example, and Indonesia wants to keep a close eye on that. So that may be something to be wary about. It really depends on specific products, but that's just a breakdown of frozen, fresh, and processed fruit products. Indonesia in itself is trying to become an agricultural powerhouse. We just see here a list of products that Indonesia is exporting to the world and how they want to continue to export and grow their industry. To the right, obviously, we see their agricultural commodities. What this means, and I'm obviously not going to cover what they are doing in trying to export, but what this means and this is something else to keep in mind, is how if Indonesia wants to become an agricultural powerhouse, and in itself they have limitations in be able to achieving this status, that relates to their, may I say, protectionist measures. So if they want to be a global supplier of bananas, of pineapples, of mangoes, which they have a lot of production, that means that they will limit, or they will manage to have a smaller influx of bananas and pineapples from outside countries. Okay, so obviously the population consumes plenty of bananas and pineapples, being them locally grown. So what they want to do is they want consumers to buy local, right? And that means that the imports of bananas from other countries in Southeast Asia or other countries in the world may be subject to different quotas. And I'll cover that towards the end of my presentation. But that's something that I've been witnessing in the past couple of years that I've been here. Import limitations, trade barriers, quotas, those are all things that you hear every day of the month, and it doesn't get easier. So those are things to be wary of as well. Just some quick stats, and I won't cover this in quite detail, but you can see here what different industries in Indonesia make up for the country GDP. But I just want to direct your attention to the graph on the right, because that relates to how Indonesia had been growing at a very comfortable pace on a year-on-year basis of close to 5%. And they had been growing their economy for the past 20 years, I believe, since the Asian crisis. That obviously had a big, COVID has and continues to have a big impact in the country's economy and its expectations for growth. So you can see the rate at how Indonesia is recovering from COVID. Now, at this point, we are being impacted by a second wave. So I think these numbers may be looked at again. But I think the worst is behind us, and Indonesia is slowly reaching its positive rate again. In terms of socioeconomic segmentation, I mentioned this is just one of the largest countries in the world. However, one of its struggles is obviously poverty and working class and vulnerability between the socioeconomic classes. So you can see here just a breakdown of the different types of or the population split by social classes. If we were to add the aspiring middle class and the middle class, which is aspiring middle class is just a figure that, or a segment that shows that people from the middle class are quite vulnerable sometimes, and when we face a recession or we face a pandemic such as what we're doing right now, then a percentage of the middle class will fall back into another class that wants to aspire to become a middle class. So that's why we split those two up. And if you add them together, it's quite a significant amount. Now, these are the people that struggle, but they also are quite large consumers of produce, of fruit, and in their daily diet. So putting them together, it's quite a relevant population. And here, this is another stat that we see that shows the breakdown of the share of food, the share of plate. And if we see here, for example, we can see what part of Indonesian consumer is made up of fruits and vegetables, or which is mostly half of a plate nowadays. The daily consumption is close to 90 grams of fruits and 120 grams of vegetables. It's not a small amount. You can see people consuming fruit mostly every day here. And in terms of per capita expenditure in food, this is close to 1.2 million rupiahs, which is a bit shy of $80 more or less. Now, I do know that many attendees in this call come from different parts of Latin America, so I will just quickly talk to you about what is happening behind the lines in terms of pursuing trade deals. Indonesia right now is currently pursuing trade deals with Mercosur. It hasn't reached the point where they've signed anything yet, but that is underway. And we can also see that in terms of the Latin American region as a whole, imports have fallen from the past year, mostly due to pandemic. And Indonesia's main exports to this region are automotive components, footwear, rubber products, textile, and having Mexico, Brazil, Peru, and Argentina as its main destinations. It lags behind most of its neighbors, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, but they are quickly. I think that in the next decade or so, Indonesia will likely reach the first position there, being such a large manufacturer and with so much potential in terms of distribution. Again, we just see a breakdown of Indonesian exports to the region. I'll direct your attention to mostly footwear, fuels, plastic, rubber, and textile, wood products and transportation. Those make up most of the share. And in terms of imports from the region, food products is mostly it from Latin America, and I think a lot of you have much to do with that. Trade deals with Mercosur, again, there's a trade deal that is being negotiated at the point in 2018. These are a bit outdated figures, but it shows that at that point, the value of exports to the region was close to $4.7 billion and imports close to $3.3 billion. We may have reached maybe a 7 to 8% growth from that nowadays. And again, I covered what are the main exports to the region. Indonesia's trade with Colombia has been on the rise as well. Indonesian exports to Colombia are recorded close to $140 million, imports close to 18. I'm sure things have started to increase up to now. And main exports are pretty much the same as the rest of the region, but Indonesian imports from Colombia include a lot of industrial products, but mostly as well cocoa beans for its growing coffee industry. Trade deals with Chile, and I think we've reached a few milestones here. And Chile has so far been the only country in Latin America that has signed a free trade agreement with Indonesia. This was signed end of 2019, and this obviously gives an amount to different products, and it waives different duties for different products as well. Now, I do want to be a bit critical here because I believe that after signing the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement with Indonesia, actually I see that exports have dropped from Chile, and that was mostly in 2020, and that had a lot to do with what I believe were protectionist measures in Indonesia that have been masked as administrative solutions or improvements, but to be honest, I did see a lot of trade barriers being put up in 2020 that really caused a lot of limitations to our growing fruit industry. The exports of Chilean grapes, Chilean apples, and other products into Indonesia in 2020 dropped by 75% after signing a trade deal. So that was a very bad year. And then you also throw COVID into the mix, and that wasn't a good year at all. But I think we've recovered from that. We've put that, and that is a matter of discussion with the authorities, so it doesn't happen again. Trade barriers are something to keep an eye on, and you'll see that definitely in the next few years. That is something that we are very attentive to, and if those things do come up, we'll do our best to be very hands-on. And the good thing is that Indonesia doesn't really pinpoint one country to limit its entries, but also it does that holistically. So you can see that New Zealand and Australia, other countries are faced with these same trade barriers, and we tend to unite and try to pursue a solution between ourselves and towards the authorities. Trade deals with Mexico. Mexico is Indonesia's largest bilateral partner in Latin America. Exports are close to almost $1 billion from Indonesia to Mexico. Imports close to 300 million. And now just to cover a few other issues that puts Indonesia on the map. We see that as of last year, 2020, Indonesia has become the largest global importer of fresh pears, overtaking Russia as a country that had the first position. And this really relates to the fact that pears are widely consumed in the country, and they are also utilized in festivities. So in the Chinese New Year's is celebrated in Indonesia, as well as its Islamic holiday Ramadan, and these holidays, pears or other fruits or other products which are very, very high quality are usually given as a gift from people to people. So that is how Indonesia is growing its pear imports, and as well as it's demanding a very high quality piece of fruit. We see many Argentine pears in the supermarkets. We see pears from South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and I think we will continue to see. Now, where we see most of the pears coming from is, of course, China. And something to keep in mind here is that most of the pears that are consumed in Indonesia are Chinese pears. I covered this as well. Chinese New Year's is celebrated. Consumptions of pears and oranges are used mainly as gifts. There's a lot of holistic things that relates to giving fruits as a gift to your loved ones, because it commemorates good health. It's just festivities that are commemorated through a very healthy gift. And this is a trend that we see in many countries, of course, China being one of the leading or one of the biggest countries where fruits are provided or given as a gift. And that trend, we also see it here in Indonesia. Now, some of the pears that I mentioned that are used in gift giving include most of the Chinese pears. But we do see Pacum pears that are mostly a lot of those are grown in Argentina, and we see a lot of those here in market. And I'll just quickly go through and direct your attention just to see where we see growth in what types of products and what are those importing countries. And I'm sure these slides will be provided to you so you can look at this into greater depth. These are 2019 stats. We don't have access to the latest ones yet, but the 2020 stats may be a little bit far from reality because of such an odd year it has been, or it was. So I think if we want to see trends, if we want to see what markets have actually been growing or in what products, then we can look at 2019 to be able to get that picture. And once 2021 comes to a close, I think we will see we see statistics relate to these trends as well. So we do see Australia in fresh oranges being the leading provider and growing as well. Mandarins, most of the mandarins in market come from Pakistan and China. Obviously, China is always present because of the of the size of the Chinese supply. But I just want to highlight other countries that have been have been growing as well. We do see a lot of mandarins from Peru, for example, South Africa, and other products. If we talk about grapes, Chile is a supplier as well. Peru, Australia, well, China as well, United States. Again, if I break down into apples, we see apples from Chile. We see apples from many Southern Hemisphere suppliers, New Zealand, South Africa. Pears, I mentioned Argentina as being one of the leading suppliers into the country after China, with close to 1.5 million kilos. South Africa and the US. I won't go into much depth. Again, these slides will likely be provided to you to uncover, but we do see, as you can see, Indonesia imports mostly every types of products that you may sell. Most of these are fresh. We do see some processed and some dried fruit as well. But as you will know, or as you may know, regulations play a big deal here in trying to advance or overcome different market obstacles when relating to regulations and trade barriers. Yeah, so again, just dried apples, dried fruit, mixed of nuts. A lot of it comes from the US, from the European Union. But there are many opportunities, as you can see here. Indonesia does import almost everything. So if you do find a local partner here, a person that talks about Indonesia becoming a powerhouse in terms of importation, then it's likely that they will find a home for their product. And I also wanted to bring a few pictures to mind here as well, and just to show you, the competitive environment, and just a few pictures of different distribution channels. So we can see here this is obviously a very, very modern retail channel. It's one of the most high upscale retailer in Indonesia, in Jakarta mostly, called Ranch Market, and we do see a growing presence of imported fruit from almost everywhere. And here we'll be highlighting apples from New Zealand, blueberries from the United States, Thailand, China, Chile, Argentina, and other products. We can see, as you can see, there are some promotional standouts for blueberries. This is the United States High Bush Blueberry Council that promotes blueberry consumption in the world. We see New Zealand, I think this is Tasmanian cherries, Sesbury, Australian oranges, apples, avocados, South African pears, and so much, and others. Again, just another example of grapes, Chilean grapes here, very proudly, Korean peaches and plums, and then just an idea of an estimation of prices and packaging examples of the products that we just saw. Then we also see the traditional market being probably the largest distribution channel in the country. It's extremely diverse. You see these little close to mom and pop stores, just the local shops. They're all called warung, and they sell mostly anything from pharmaceutical supplies to produce to water to just anything that you want to purchase in a small packaging is mostly sold in these little shops, and you see probably like 20 of these in one street. So and they all carry the same items. So for example, you see bananas here in the door, and then you have the equivalent of a retail channel that just focuses on products and fresh fruit that are also in the streets, and they are offered to customers. A lot of these carry local produce mostly, but you do find imported produce here as well. So we highlighted some products that were on display here, and these are all bulk. You see them obviously you can purchase bulk, and we see pears, apples, table grapes, mostly coming from China. At that point in time, when we went out and looked at the produce, most of these prices are mostly 20% cheaper compared to retailers, to modern retailers, and obviously the quality falls when compared as well. Now, yeah, those are the fact that the quality may be slightly less doesn't mean that it's not sold. It's also sold, and just the price may be smaller, but that really means that if you as a supplier, as an exporter, have different sets of conditions and qualities for your product, then Indonesia may be able to take up those offerings and distribute them accordingly, between all of its distribution channels. So just another example of what these stores look like. Yeah, this is another one, and to the right there's one that obviously it's mobile. So yeah, the cart driver just picks up their produce little cart and just takes it along the street, and it's a moving retail, if you will. Open markets is also very relevant. What we saw before is actually a store. Now these are just your open markets, your free markets, and you see most of production. Now when we went out to see some of these areas, we didn't see a lot of imported fruit, mainly tropical fruits of local origin. We did see some imported products from China and Thailand. Most of these products, however, they carry mostly vegetables. I wouldn't see any value-added product available in free markets. It's mostly bulk fruits and vegetables. Hospitality and tourism is again a very, very upscale distribution channel as well. In Bali specifically, and I think many of you have been to Bali as well, you see just an array of hospitality destinations, from your hostel backpacking, 1-star, one-night stay, to very, very, very expensive hotels and resort destinations. And they all need to carry produce to be able to offer that to their guests. So obviously the quality is very high as well. So you see that as a growing destination. And I think as we start to get back to normal and frontiers start to open again, Bali will see an influx of international tourists, and you will definitely start to see imports and distribution of fresh produce to those hotels come back to life. On an average, in a non-pandemic year, Bali sees close to 10 million tourists per year. Many of those come from China, but a growing number of those comes from the European Union, the United States, Australia, and fresh fruit consumption is part of their daily diet. So you'll see this growing as well. Now, just to wrap up, I do want to talk about the documentations, the regulations, and the complexities or the obstacles in being able to export fresh fruit into Indonesia. And I think this is what you all want to hear. Now, if you want to export a plant origin product into Indonesia, on the one hand, I would recommend that you have a relationship with a knowledgeable importer, because it's the importer that's going to have to go through the different loopholes and ask you for documentation. Now, to be able to export into Indonesia, you have two ways. And in terms of food safety is a very relevant, important thing for the authorities, and they do look at that very closely. So on the one hand, countries can apply for a country-wide recognition for their food safety control system. There are, I think, 9 countries who today have that status. Chile is one of them, Argentina as well. what the country food safety control system provides you with, or provides the country exporters with, is being able to export its fresh fruit through the port of Jakarta. Now that benefit is only available for those countries that have a countrywide food safety control system that has been officially recognized by Indonesia, and usually has a lasting period of 3 years until it expires, or it has to be renewed. And to be able to negotiate that status, that has meant so many documents have to be provided to the authorities, but that is a government-to-government recognition. Fortunately, on my end, Chile does have that status. We have just submitted the required documentation to renew our status into 2024. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, there are different documentations that you are required to present, or your importer is required to present to be able to bring the shipment in. That is a prior notice, phytosanitary certificate that is issued by the approved body, the regulative body in your country, and a certificate of analysis, if that's the case, if the food safety is actually tested by registered laboratory in your country. I'll cover that in a second. But in terms of countrywide recognition, that doesn't have to be submitted, and that's the added benefit. Now, the second way to be able to export into Indonesia is for Indonesia to recognize an accredited food safety testing laboratory in your country, to be able to issue that accreditation for that shipment, for that exporter on behalf of Indonesia. In many cases, the documentations that have to be presented for that exporter include a prior notice, a phytosanitary certificate that again is issued by mostly the agricultural service, official service in your country, and a certificate of analysis which is issued by that food safety laboratory. So keep that in mind. Now, if those laboratories are not accredited, or if there is a recognition of those laboratory, then that means that you can export your fresh produce through the port of Surabaya, not through the port of Jakarta, because that benefit is only available to those countries that have a countrywide food safety recognition system. Unfortunately, that is the case. And Surabaya is also another port that is in Java. So you may as well be available, or may be able to enter the country through its main island, which is Java. It's just a different port, so there may be added cost because Surabaya is a bit further away from Jakarta, as obviously the port of Jakarta. So those are two ways where food safety is or how to address the food safety issue with the authorities. And again, I do commend that you relate your relationship, or that you discuss this with a potential importer. There aren't many importers in Indonesia, and knowing a great deal of them myself, they're all quite capable and able to discuss these issues, or be able to import produce because of their experience in the country. If you do not have a food safety control system in your country or registered laboratory, then it's not possible to be able to export into Indonesia. Now, before being able to export into Indonesia, there are two standards, or there are two processes that have to be carried out from your local government with or relating with the Indonesian government. And on the one hand, and I think this relates to any country where you want to be able to open market access for different products. On the one hand, and what we're doing now at least as well, is if we want to, for example, say that we want to export apples into Indonesia. So what our government has to do nowadays is present written documentation, historical documentation in regards to its processing, its plagues that may be available in our country, and a lot of series of documentations that make up the first submission, the first official submission that Chile, in this example, wants to export apples into Indonesia. Indonesia takes up all this information and conducts a pest risk analysis, where a desk review of all this documentation is provided or is carried out. That it depends how long it may take. I've seen it take 3 months, and I've seen it take 2 years. So it really depends. On what? I'm not sure. It really depends on how insistent you may be with local authorities and their, I guess, how many things they have on their plate, and also how important politically is that product into Indonesia. So it really depends. I'm happy to take some questions on that if that's the case. That's the first step. So if I want to export apples into Indonesia, a desk review and a pest risk analysis is conducted first. Then usually Indonesia would ask this country for additional documentation. Then again, there's another back and forth of additional documentation. Once that desk review is finalized and the authorities are satisfied with what the country has been brought to the table, then we have another the food safety component of the market access. And what this means, and again relating to what we just discussed, if there is a countrywide food safety recognition, then what the authorities need to do is, and still talking about apples, they would usually have to schedule an on-site visit and travel to that country and oversee the production requirements, everything that they looked at in the desk review. They want to see it on site. So they would usually travel and they would see, okay, how does Chile grow its apples? What ingredients are utilized in the processing? How many things are required in the different steps? And that usually is a 1-week trip where they oversee those different stages. If the competence of food safety control is delegated into a registered laboratory, then they don't necessarily have to schedule an on-site visit, but they require those people from that laboratory to be able to oversee the production stages in that country. So that's another way to do it. Sometimes on-site visits are still required. It depends. It really depends on the production, on the products, and whatever they have to they want to see. And after they schedule that on-site visit and they come back to to Indonesia, they obviously gather together. They talk about whatever they saw, and after a few months, they might publish a regulation that says Chile is now approved to export apples into Indonesia until some year, and and after the expiration, you will have to again ask for a renewal of that export. That doesn't mean that they would have to fly to your country again. Usually it doesn't. It's just another desk review. So that is a very comprehensive processing of what Indonesian authorities need to receive from the official Ministry of Agriculture from your country to be able to analyze whether or not they can approve those products. So once once Chilean apples, and now again, let's circle back to this example because it makes things understand easier. Say now apples have been approved into Indonesia. Now, this is where importers have a very difficult task to carry out as well, because on the one hand, importers, once apples are approved, I, as an importer, have to go to Indonesian authorities and have to ask different sets of the government for different sets of documentation to be able to import apples. So on the one hand, I, as an importer, have to go to the Ministry of Agriculture and request an import recommendation. So what that means is they just want to be able to say, look, I want to bring in 100 tons of Chilean apples from this exporter. Chile has a countrywide recognition. These are its food safety control systems. I just want to bring in 100 tons of apples. The Ministry of Agriculture may say, okay, all right, you know, your 100 tons of apples are approved, or they may say, we will approve 80 tons of apples. It depends. What does it depend on? Mostly the importer's historical trajectory in importing fresh produce, in its cold storage capacity. That's very important as well. So if they say they want to bring in 100 tons and they only have capacity for 30 tons, then the Ministry of Agriculture will be aware of that limitation, because they carry audits into their facilities quite often. So that's the first stage. They need to request an import recommendation. Once they are granted the import recommendation, they have to go out to the Ministry of Trade and request an import permit. In other words, a quota. This is another obstacle where the Ministry of Trade allows the importer to bring in a specific amount of Chilean apples in this example. And again, we're looking at a process that it may take some time because it's quite bureaucratic. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's not. But importers know about this and they know when to start pressing them. Before they would be required to carry this process out once in a year, usually in November. It's still the case where in November they have to present or they have to ask for recommendations for the following year. So say it's 2021, I as an importer have to go out to the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Trade and request an import permit and a recommendation for 100 tons of apples that I want to bring in 2022. And they will authorize or they will provide me with that quotas depending on many different conditions, but they will likely grant those volumes for the total of 2022. Now, if I want to bring in an additional 50 tons of apples in April, for example, as an importer, I can go out to the authorities and ask for an additional permit. That does happen. So once the permit is provided, then it's now possible to bring in different products, and the shipments will come into Indonesia and they will be inspected by the authorities and the customs agency. This is again just for importers, but they can apply for recommendations online, and then they can apply for import permits, also referred to as an SPI, from the Ministry of Trade online as well. They can apply at any point of the year, and they do have a validity period. Usually it's 1 year. Now, why are some products subject to quotas and some aren't subject to quotas? Well, that again relates back to what I discussed in the beginning of my presentation, relating with trade barriers and protectionist measures. Because Indonesia wants to grow its own export volume, and they want consumers to buy local, they want to regulate and they want to limit the amount of imported produce from other countries. And this has been very vocal, and we've actually seen the Minister of Agriculture come out publicly and say, we want to identify where we are bringing most of our produce from importing countries and limit them, because we need to grow our own agriculture and we want to be able to offer to Indonesian consumers local pineapples, local coconuts, bananas, etc. That's easy to say and hard to carry out in this country because the agricultural sector is still in infant form. The distribution chain, the Indonesian distribution chain to the world is still growing. The exporting capacity of its growers is still limited when compared to, say, Chilean exporters, Argentinian exporters, Brazilian exporters, who have been exporting globally for decades. Indonesia is just quickly coming up. They're now aware of the potential, of the opportunities of their just limitless land where they can grow their crops. But it's not that easy to just say, okay, I'm going to grow 1,000 hectares of pineapples and export them to the world. There are added costs, added barriers, added there's a knowledge process to be able to carry out. It's not that easy, but sometimes authorities don't keep that in mind, and what they say is, we just have to identify what we are bringing in and try to limit them. How do we limit them? Through recommendations that are granted by the Ministry of Agriculture and import permits. And what products are those subject to quotas? Well, there's quite a list, and again, these can be shared later in the after the presentation. But as you can see, many products that are grown in Indonesia are subject to quotas. Carrots, different onions, shallots, garlic, bananas, chilies, fruits, etc., mangoes, mangosteen, pineapples, oranges, lemons, grapes. You can see that Indonesia is testing its production of all these types of fruit. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, if your product is listed here in this regulation, it doesn't mean that you cannot export it and that your quotas may be 1 ton. That's not true, because it's such a vast population. And say, for example, an example that I saw last year is, garlic, onions, pineapples is part of the daily diet for Indonesians. Now, the Indonesia as a producer of pineapples, and onions and garlic, they don't produce enough to be able to supply its own population. So they need to rely on imports. So yeah, so that's where we see some bipolarity here, because on the one hand, the country does want to limit the importation through quotas, but on the other hand, we don't see enough supply to be able to keep up with the Indonesian demand. So we see this is a changing thing every year. We just have to keep an eye open, and many times they will remove some products from this list. Sometimes they will add another product because they see an opportunity. So say, for example, global blueberries. Blueberries, for example, is not here in the list. But if Indonesia is starting to see that, okay, we may be able to plant some blueberries in Sumatra, for example, and we can maybe export some of those blueberries into Europe in the next 10 years. They're not exporting now, but maybe in the next 10 years they will be able to do so. Then maybe we put blueberries on the list and try to limit the importation of that. And we'll see more Indonesian rich consumers buying fresh blueberries. So maybe we can sell Indonesian blueberries to them. So yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. And just a few ending thoughts. Just keep, again, a close attention to the regulatory context and protectionist measure. Religion does play an important role in consumption in this country. I think it was covered by Accenture as well, that e-commerce is very, very relevant and a growing trend in food supply, not only in Indonesia, but throughout the region. This is a regional conference. I've talked about Indonesia, but I do want to highlight that each Southeast Asian market is different, so you need to adapt your business strategy accordingly. Consumers, business partners, they're all cultures, languages, they're all different in this country. It's not like Latin America. We have a quite lineal comparison between most countries. It's not the case here. So that's something to keep in mind. And what I see as an opportunity as well is just to promote value-added product offering. Commodities are required, but as we grow into a world that where commodities are offered throughout the year, then how do you stand out? How do you offer a product that is different from apples? Yes, there are quality conditions and different quality levels, but as you promote value-added products, I think that you will have more business success and stand out from the competition. So with that in line, thank you again for giving me a few minutes to share this information. I hope this was enlightening and helpful. Happy to take any questions if you might have. And again, I was a bit blunt in saying that Indonesia has a lot of barriers, but at the same time, it does have a lot of opportunities. And I think as this market continues to recover from COVID and continues its growth uptrend, it will become. It already is the largest economy in the region. It will be a big player globally speaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando, for this presentation and enlightening us about the trade requirements to enter products into Indonesia, mainly on the fresh produce. We have some questions for you. So one of them is, Argentina is in the first priority group for imports in Indonesia?
Can you elaborate? What do you mean by first priority group, Francisco?
I think Francisco will mean when you present the chart. So Argentina, I understand that Argentina has been actually granted access. That is, Indonesia has recognized their.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Argentina is part of the countries that has a countrywide recognition system. So what that means is that Argentine exporters may be able to export its products through the port of Jakarta. What I do know is that there's a list of the different products that are able to export into the port of Jakarta. So because I have a countrywide system recognition, it doesn't mean that everything that is grown in Argentina can be exported into Jakarta. If what the Argentine embassy or what the Argentine government did most likely is that they spoke with the Ministry of Agriculture and they said, here's a list of, I don't know, 20, for example, 20 products that are part of our countrywide recognition, and we want these 20 products to be able to come in to Indonesia through the port of Jakarta. And that's how the process works. And if there's a new product that they want to be able to put into the countrywide recognition, then they have to again uncover a pest risk analysis. They have to go through the stages required to be able to access or to be able to export new products. Sometimes that means that they have to start off with having access through the port of Surabaya and then be able to export into Jakarta. It really depends. There's a list. I would suggest Francisco to speak with the Ministry of Agriculture and request that list, where you can see what are those products that are listed, and which of those can enter through Jakarta, and which of those products may have not had a pest risk analysis yet. So it means that maybe they don't have access to Indonesia yet. That is the case for Chile, for example. We are able to export only 6 products into Indonesia right now. Table grapes, apples, kiwis, pears, blueberries, and cherries. If we want, and it's likely that we will want to export Chilean oranges, lemons down the line, well, that means we have to conduct a pest risk analysis and request access to the market in the next few years, because that takes time. You know, the pest risk analysis, the on-site review. We're facing a pandemic, so that means the authorities cannot travel to Chile. So we're talking about virtual inspection. And right now, you know, if we want to export citrus products, that we can't right now. It's not approved. So I would suggest that Francisco, you know, talk to its own authorities and ask for that list and understand where those products lie. I think he's talking about fresh plums. I don't know. I don't necessarily know and have access to that list. So I would say that's the best suggestion I can provide.
Thank you. And we have also a question from Ignacio, and it says, here in Argentina, we must arrange an inspection with SGS2. Actually, is that, you understand the question, or you want Ignacio to provide more information?
Yeah, I think so. That sounds like a statement more than a question.
Yeah. Well, I think there's no more questions, and then no more comments in the chat. Fernando, thank you very much for this. We have also prepared a set of documents that will be sent tomorrow to all the participants about the phytosanitary requirements and engross the regulations for each of the Southeast Asian countries. And this webinar has been recorded, and it will be available for the participants. Thank you very much, and good evening in Latin America. And for the rest of us in Asia, have a good, pleasant day. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.